How do you think that looked? Good, bad, ugly? Let me know in the comments below. Personally, I think there's things that can be improved, but hey, there's always room for improvement. So I'm just going to start off by saying that there's no rules as to how you should shoot B-roll. So if you think that the way that you're shooting is going to help tell the story, then so be it, shoot like that. But these 4 things that I'm going to share with you today are things that are going to help you keep your B-roll looking interesting and feeling interesting to the viewer who's watching it. So the first thing that you want to consider when shooting B-roll is your story and your message. Remember that B-roll sequences are supplementary to the A-roll, it's secondary footage to the main footage. So having a bunch of random shots within your sequence is not going to add any value to your sequence whatsoever. So it's a good idea, it's always a good idea to keep your footage relevant. So if you're just used to filming everything within your line of sight, you're not necessarily adding any value to the viewer's experience, and that can leave them feeling disconnected. And to avoid leaving your viewer feeling disconnected, you can follow 3 simple steps which I follow to keep my B-roll sequences looking relevant and to help them to flow. And the first thing to do is to have an establishing shot. An establishing shot sets the scenery and it lets the viewer know where the sequence is going to be happening. The next thing to do is have a detail shot, and a detail shot gives the viewer a deeper understanding of what's going on in that sequence. So let's say for instance you're shooting B-roll within a coffee shop. Your detail shots may be a close-up of the barista going through the process of making a coffee. And the last thing that you want to consider with those 3 steps is a payoff. And a payoff is just something that's worthy of being a conclusion, usually at the end of your sequence. Remember that the payoff has to be relevant, but it doesn't have to be epic and it doesn't have to be super amazing. As you saw in the video at the beginning, my payoff was the completed iced coffee at the end. Okay, so the next thing that you want to consider when shooting B-roll is camera movement. For me, static shots are not very interesting. They lack taste and they don't engage me as much as a moving shot would. Now, with that being said, if a static camera shot is something that's going to help you tell the story or add to the theme of your B-roll sequence, by all means do that. Like I said in the beginning, if it helps tell your story, go ahead and do that. But if that isn't the case, avoid having an extensive amount of static camera shots in your sequence. A moving shots makes for a more interesting sequence, it's more attention grabbing, and you will retain the attention of the viewer more effectively. And the next thing that you want to consider when shooting B-roll is not something a lot of people talk about, but it's your style. And essentially, unusual or quirky camera movement can make for a more interesting sequence. Obviously, if it's appropriate for the type of sequence that you're shooting, if it fits within the theme and if it's within the story, then yes, unusual camera movements make for a more interesting sequence. I have to give a lot of credit to James Matthews and Daniel Schiffer. If you've not seen them before, I've linked their channels in the description below, so go check them out. Those guys are creating some of the most interesting stylistic sequences on YouTube right now, and they were actually the inspiration behind the sequence at the beginning, if you didn't notice already. And the next thing that you want to consider when shooting a B-roll sequence, which is super important, is your choice of music. So when choosing your music, it's really important that it matches the pacing and the theme of the video. If they don't match up, you can have something that ends up looking terrible, for example. Yes. And to avoid that, what you can do is just search for the music early on. And what that's going to enable you to do is to record in a certain way that matches the pacing and the theme of the music that you've chosen. And the last little thing that you want to consider with your choice of music is in post-production, edit to the song to an extent. When you edit to the music, you can make for rhythmic.
This is the definition of rhythmic. Having or relating to rhythm.
Rhythmic. So when you edit to the music, you can make for a more rhythmic sequence. For example, when you know there's a beat coming up, that's when you add your cut. Bam. But with that being said, while editing to the beat or to the melody of the song can make for a rhythmic sequence, you don't want to have your sequences being predictable to the viewer, and you always want to have the viewer guessing to be able to retain their attention. So that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to say. I hope those things are going to be of value to you when you go out and shoot your B-roll. Let me know if those things have helped you. Let me know if they're insightful. If you liked this video, please like the video. If you want to see more videos like these from me, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon. I'm making videos every week on this channel. And if you're not familiar with who I am, if this is your first time here, my name is Charles. I'm a freelance videographer. I've been into videography, cinematography for over 2 years, and I've been doing freelancing for about 3 months. I decided to open this channel to help people who have been in my situation, who are in my situation, and maybe people who are even better than me. I can open up their eyes to new perspective that they've never thought about before. So stick around if you enjoy this type of content. If you have any type of questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below or find my email in the about section of my channel. Anyway, that's been all from me, and I'll see you next week. Peace. So I asked my sister to help me with this sequence, but she didn't want her face to be shown. So I'm gonna find another way to embarrass her. Thank you for helping me, Layla.